Dubai Real Estate Unplugged, brought to you by the team here at House & House Real Estate. I'm Luke Remington, Managing Director for the House & House Group. I've been working in real estate for over 20 years and here in Dubai since 2012. I'm super excited to welcome back a brother of House & House, a long-term mentor of House & House, Josh Phegan.
Luke, lovely to be here.
Lovely to see you, Josh. And also we've got Simon, who's decided to pop in last minute.
Still hanging around, yeah. Well, thank you for coming, Josh.
So while I've got both of you, let's jump straight into this. Josh, international trainer. What's happened worldwide in 2022?
Well, look, it's an amazing thing because you think about the different skill sets that you have to train in a state agency, and there's no doubt that over the course of the last few years, we've actually seen an incredible rising market right the way around the world. I got to see the former secretary of the Fed Reserve from the USA recently typify that 2020 to 2022 will be known as the era where money was literally falling from the sky. And that is ultimately because interest rates were so low on a global level. There was no thing about inflation whatsoever. People weren't going on holidays and they were naturally out buying good residential quality real estate. The interesting conversation of what's actually happened is that one of the markets in Australasia, New Zealand, was actually the first of the major developed countries to move on inflation and to move on interest rates. And so they kind of call it the canary in the coal mine. It is actually the market that is going through the harshest conditions first and is ultimately the first market to emerge. What we have seen certainly in that market is that property prices went up without a doubt by 40% in a very short period of time. And now you're seeing those property prices come back. Again, dependent upon area and type of property, but on average, probably about 20% across New Zealand has come off in terms of prices over the course of the last 12 months. Australia has followed closely, maybe 3 or 4 months behind what was actually happening in New Zealand. We certainly see that October of 2021 would be the peak of the market. And that ultimately now, by the time we get to October, early November, we're actually in a position now that we've effectively been through 12 months of a downward cycle. Without a doubt, declining markets are a normal part of what actually happens in any real estate environment. But inside of that environment, again, you're probably seeing somewhere around a 15 to 20% decline in property prices after arguably one of the strongest residential booms of a 40% increase in under 18 months during that period. So what you've got to realize is that everything obviously is very much anchored towards what's actually happening in America. The conversations and the geopolitical tensions that are happening across Europe, the issues around what's actually happening with inflation that's been caused by supply line type stuff, the conversation around what's actually happening to accessibility to money. What you are seeing without a doubt is that most of the developed world is actually heading into some level of decline after a rapid increase. Now, it's kind of interesting because you come to Dubai and it's almost like you're protected or quite sheltered from what's actually happening externally. And in some respects, you are benefiting from some of those geopolitical tensions where people are making the decision to get out of war-torn sections of the world and to move to, potentially one of the safest places in the world. And naturally also too, people realizing that the lifestyle that's on offer here in Dubai is absolutely phenomenal in that you've got incredible weather, you've got amazing experiences, you've got phenomenal travel opportunities, you've got great work and career opportunities. And that's why I really think that, you actually do have the capability to be able to weather the storm compared to most developed markets. The other key thing, and they're saying that this is very strong for Australia, again for the US, and again for the UAE, one of the things that may well save you is your ability to be able to have onshore power production. So we know that energy costs across the world are significantly increasing. Given the amount of petroleum that's produced, the amount of energy that's produced in this sector of the world, then there is no doubt that Dubai may well be protected from some of those cost of living pressures. So I think it's a really important thing to realize that markets do go in cycles. You go from top of the market, declining market, hit the bottom of market cycle, go back up into a rising market. In very well-developed markets, that would normally take somewhere between 5 to 7 years. What we're seeing in Australia and certainly in New Zealand is that that's actually happening in under 18 months. Why? Because there's huge amounts of government intervention. So I think that literally when you start to have a look at that and you see what's actually happening across the globe, it's okay for property prices to come back. The reality of it is that they can't continue to grow at 20 and 30% every year for the rest of life.
Yeah. Josh, do you feel a lot of this with the pandemic where we probably expected during the pandemic for things to slow down and get quiet and batten down the hatches? It's just, obviously it went completely the opposite way and the things just took off.
Yeah, so there's no doubt on that.
It's just delayed. This is a delayed from the pandemic, or
Oh, there's no doubt that literally what's been happening though is that governments, without a doubt, are trying to intervene in markets. So we actually had a banking royal commission in Australia just prior to the pandemic occurring, and naturally off the back of that, property prices were already starting to come back. They were down by 5, 10, 15%. At the end of that banking royal commission, and they made stipulations about how much money you could borrow, conversations around accessing, what ability you've actually got. They started to change what the interest rate of the day was by adding a buffer on top of that. Long story short, the market was nearly collapsing, and we actually had a federal election. We had a new prime minister come in, and there was a huge amount of positivity that came into the environment very quickly because they had some very positive property policies. Now, what actually happened off the back of that is that then naturally the pandemic hits in, say, January, February of 2020, and the major bank in Australia that does the majority of the transactions came out and said that they believe that property prices will be down by 30%. That was their prediction in March and April as the pandemic started to take hold. Well, they got the 30% right, just the other way. And then ultimately, literally that whole conversation is that, what we've realized about economists is that they'll never ever get it right. And what you've got to realize is that human beings are unbelievable when you start to think about what actually happened in the global environment. I know specifically in the Australian environment right now that over $250 billion is sitting inside of savings accounts that weren't there at the start of the pandemic. So the problem with trying to curb inflation is that it's not even about trying to slow down demand or crush demand, because people have got so much in savings that they can still keep this demand-driven curve going for quite some time. And that's a really scary thing to think that, central banks are trying to move to slow these economies. And let's be really clear, the goal of interest rates is to crush demand. And when I talk about crushing demand, it's not just for property, it's for houses, cars, boats, jet skis, you name it, retail spending, all of the above. And what they're having to do is they're working out very quickly that a lot of these changes that are actually happening, people just aren't heeding that they need to pull their belt in, so to speak, and they're actually out there still spending as much cash as they can.
Dubai Real Estate Unplugged.
Are people still spending as much as
right, in Australia when you're saying prices have dropped off 15%? I mean, that's a large amount, isn't it? I guess is it fair to say that in Australia, in the Australian market, you were in the perfect storm in terms of the prices increased a lot, probably more to a higher level than they'd ever been in history? Is that probably fair to say?
Yeah.
Then you've got increased interest rates, you've got increased cost of living, perfect storm, and everyone's gone, oh, well, now we have to batten down the hatches a bit. Are they really still spending as much as they were before?
So the interesting thing is that when they look at interest rates, they look at a couple of measures. One of the key things they look at is luxury car sales. They also go and have a look at retail spending and what's happening in the stores. They have a conversation around what's actually happening in terms of lending for people buying, residential housing. And also too, they have a look at the employment figures. And what you're finding, in particularly in places like New Zealand as well, they are substantially short of workers because they had policies that were very preventative of anyone traveling over that 2-year period. None of the travellers have returned. And so a lot of the part-time labour, particularly in restaurants, hospitality, any of those sectors, just simply do not exist. And they say, New Zealand, what a great place to holiday if you want to serve yourself. And that's that whole conversation because it's a really, really, and Australia's exactly the same, by the way, that literally to try to get people to come for their European holidays out to Australasia is just simply, that's just something that's not happening. So what's actually a really interesting phase is that without a doubt that governments are trying to move ahead of where consumers are at, but consumers are already ahead of where governments are at, and they say, we're just got to weather the storm. We're actually predicting that by June next year, we'll start to see property prices start to increase in Australia.
Okay.
And that's because what will actually happen is that the interest rate of the day will ultimately start to decline. So we're expecting a very short, sharp, aggressive phase of what's happening with inflation and interest rate growth. And then naturally we expect it to come back quite quickly. And that's a very common thing. And to give you an idea, someone that could go out and borrow $1,085,000 in January, if they went to any of the banks right now to go and get the same amount of funds, the bank would only give them $840,000. So it's $245,000 less that they've actually got to spend. So they're now saying that borrowing capacity is down 20%. So in other words, borrowing capacity is going down faster than actual current property prices. So there's a day where there's a bit of a lag effect, in other words. So when an interest rate change actually happens, it's 30, 60, 90 days before you actually see it in market. And that's usually because people have got pre-approvals for their lending. So they still have the ability to be able to spend at a higher level for a short period of time until they go back for reassessment on those financials.
But I think in terms of interest rates, the reality is the worldwide, this is a worldwide problem, isn't it? Interest rates have been so low, almost zero, the bank rates, that that's become the new normal. And actually, when you look back at the last 10 or 20 years, 4 or 5% is actually quite sensible. And I think actually probably far more sensible going forward. People just have to get used to what the new normal is, don't they?
So it's amazing. I got to show a graph about interest rates. And for example, there was an event in about 1990, 1992, that era. And during that particular time, people were paying 18 and 19%. So like to be in a position that right now that you're talking somewhere circa 5, maybe 6%, it's actually a really normal market. And it actually gives the reserve banks or the central banks in each of the communities the ability to be able to move to re-stimulate a market if ever anything like a GFC type event happened. The big difference about what's going on now versus GFC is that GFC was a liquidity crisis. So you could go to the bank and say, hey, can I borrow money? Yep, you all stack up, but we just don't have any money to lend. This time round, they've got plenty of money to lend. And the other problem that they've got right now is we've actually got full employment. And so when you start to think about why is that a problem? Well, there's no surplus labor. So that means that growth will actually stagnate because we don't have the people to actually take the jobs. So even if we wanted to open the factories or we wanted to do these things, we actually don't have the physical people. So what you will see in Australia is a huge immigration boom. And the other conversation that we're also witnessing right now is that the amount of product that's being built is substantially reduced. So to give you an idea, in Sydney, for example, there were 7,000 new apartments that they began construction on over the course of the last 12 months. Back in 2017, that figure was 32,000 new starts. So we're building a quarter of the stock, but yet we're going to have a significant increase in population. Where are they all going to live? What this is leading to is one of the biggest rental booms in history. We're seeing significant amounts of returns for investors. Investors are coming back into the market like there's no tomorrow. And so naturally you will see that, I believe very firmly by the middle of next year, we'll be back out of the bottom of the market cycle and back into a normal market and certainly something that's recovering quite quickly. Not necessarily aggressive growth, but certainly a lot of stability.
Yeah, really interesting. Considering, you've been in that 12 months of maybe decline, and then quickly over to Simon on this, because 2022 for us, Simon, we're now 1st of November. We've just come off the back of October being a record month at House & House. Do you want to summarise? It's kind of...
I guess Dubai kind of bucking the trend, isn't it? Dubai's never really liked to conform with anyone else. So, and they're doing exactly the opposite. And Dubai's it's a small place. So it's a small, slowly maturing, but fairly immature property market that at the current period has got huge immigration. There's lots of people coming here from all over the world, primarily you would say Europe, the UK, with all the problems there politically, economically, but also new parts of the globe that we haven't seen people moving from, and Dubai's a fairly small place, and yet the population's been booming. A lot, tag that onto the back of a very successful World Expo, upcoming World Cup for Qatar, which is our neighbours next door, and suddenly you've got the perfect storm for a fairly small city, along with very visionary leadership that have decided they want 6 million people here by 2040, and suddenly this place is exploding, isn't it? You can't, Josh, you've been here a few days. It takes time to drop you back home in the evening. It takes time for us to get to work. The traffic's crazy. And rental and sale prices, especially in the luxury sector, have gone through the roof. And the demand has been stronger than it's ever been. I mean, there's been more transactions this year than there have ever been in the history of Dubai real estate. So it's all going in the right direction. It seems a bit strange, really, Josh, doesn't it? Because you've come from a market that's been 12 months of decline. And we're sitting here like, no, it's all booming and we're all happy.
So traditionally, I'm talking to people about price reductions and how we facilitate that. And I'm like, well, I don't have to do that this week.
So we just had an off-plan session, haven't we? They turned around to you and said, well, I haven't got any stock and it's 10 to 1 chance of getting a unit. What do we do?
Yes.
Shocked.
I think that whole conversation is a really good one. You've got to realise that the foundational principles of what's actually happening in Dubai, that everything the visionary leadership has set up is actually coming to fruition. Literally, it's a phenomenal travel destination. It's a phenomenal business hub. It actually has an incredible capability around what it's doing, and it's got an amazing climate. Like I'm going to say, if you have a look at the risks of what we're seeing, I think that we've got some sections of Australia that have been through either wildfires, which we call bushfires, or we've actually had significant flooding events. And in some parts of the country where I've got clients, they're up to their 4th flooding event this year. Now, that's something you'd never ever think of, but in a world that's more extreme in terms of what's actually happening with climate, you can certainly say, well, look, you know what, Dubai is a pretty amazing environment to be in, knowing that there's probably 2 to 3 months of the year where it's probably not that habitable, but the other 9 months of the year is absolutely brilliant. So what I'd be saying to you is that literally there is a very small window for people to actually realize the value that they're getting into Dubai right now, because I think that the global demand that you'll continue to see in this city over the next decade is absolutely going to be phenomenal. And one of the great things that a lot of people forget is that the media influence or power in Dubai feels very low.
Yeah.
Whereas in Australia, we have the ability to topple a prime minister. Over in the UK, we have the ability to topple a prime minister every 30 days. So it tends to think a little bit differently about. And I think that's a really important commentary in that, it's one of the reasons why I'd actually consider a full-time move to Dubai is purely because of the stability that's provided by the leadership.
You're listening to Dubai Real Estate Unplugged by House & House, award-winning property agency in Dubai.
Talking on the value, Simon, we actually had a bit of a discussion yesterday where we probably weren't on the same page, but you had very good reasons for that. Let's talk values. Dubai, cheap, expensive?
So this is what I mean. Okay, so Dubai, you could buy a property. This sort of headline figure is you could buy a property here for the same price you could 10 years ago. Now, I could let Josh comment on that, but you could say that's good, bad, ugly, or anywhere in between. I mean, the fact is there's no other property market in the world, or certainly not as an established major city, that you could buy for the same rate as you could 10 years ago. Sydney's probably double, is it?
Yeah. So the number over 30 years has been 383%.
Okay, so it's basically doubled every 10 years, which is what people very proudly say of London. But London has now got to a point where the average person, they're getting a 2 to 3% yield on the property, which certainly doesn't stack up when interest rates are 4 or 5%. Mm-hmm. And so Dubai suddenly is looking very attractive, even on current sale prices. You're looking at between 6 and as high as 8% net rental income. That still works in a market where interest rates are 5 or 6%. And it's obviously tax-free as another benefit. But, and prices for the average property, albeit, okay, not your luxury villa on the beach on Palm Jumeirah, that's now sits in a different category. But you can buy a perfectly nice residential apartment. The studios were selling recently at 450,000 dirhams. So starting from, $130,000 US, which to me is very, very reasonable. And I think there's huge amounts of growth over the next 10 years. We were quoted in one Arabian business as to saying it could as much as double in the next 10 years. And I firmly believe it could, in line with that population growth. So it makes it quite exciting. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit too bullish on Dubai, but I think that there's value.
I don't think you're bullish enough. And then I would say that literally all the foundational principles are actually here, that that everyone is looking around the world and saying, hang on a second, there's a lot of instability in leadership. There's a lot of instability about what we can and can't do, what we actually want to go. And this is what you've got to realize is that, Dubai is still very much a developing market, rules, regulations, all those things that are coming into place. And some of these over-regulated markets are actually in a position where you just can't make a dollar, so to speak. And so I think that from that perspective, that if you think about your location to the rest of the world, that old adage of build it and they will come. And I think that literally 2008 is just a great example that we'd built too quickly before they'd come.
I mean, yeah, that's an interesting one you mentioned about 2008 because it's very different. We do sit in a very different market now. I had someone the other night telling me, I'm selling up because, I'm comparing it to 2008. And, I've got a few points on that. One is that we're significantly lower and as an average price point to 2008, despite the fact, so we're a lot lower, despite the fact that was obviously 14 years ago. And we sit in a very different position. We've got over double the population, a population of which has changed significantly. In 2008, when I was here, we were just selling to investors and they wanted to sell 3 weeks later. Now we're selling to many end users that have a 10 or 15-year plan. So the demographic of the buyer has shifted a huge amount. The population's more than doubled and it's still significantly cheaper. Suddenly that seems like the perfect storm to me in terms of what an opportunity for the next decade, for the next 20 years, in line with the leadership's vision to double the population again, which I actually I believe quite strongly could happen significantly earlier. I think they could reach that 6 million by as soon as 2030, potentially. You're looking at 3.6 million today, which has already gone up, I think, around 200,000 since the start of the year. If that growth continues at that kind of rate, we'll go past 4 and 5 million very, very quickly.
Yeah, no. We've seen a couple of property launches recently, Simon. I saw a video of one the other day which looked like a football stadium full of supporters. It sold out within 2-3 minutes, I heard. I don't know how true that is, but...
there's lots going on at the moment.
Are these multiple buyers, or is it one buyer buying floors?
There's a combination of those. I think, obviously the developers have to be in a position where they will look after their existing clients. They do sell a percentage of the stock to bulk buyers, to big investors who are spending, $3 or $4 million upwards. But then for the rest of the units, they release them into a market whereby all of us estate agents, 2,000 real estate companies, 15,000, whatever the exact number of real estate agents, are all offering the same properties to the same clients. And the reality is that some of the Emaar properties and some of the Miras and Dubai properties and the different, big government-backed developers are probably oversubscribed about 10 to 1. So you've almost got a sort of lucky dip chance, if you like, of 10 to 1 of let's try and secure a unit, despite the fact that it's going to be off-plan for 4 years and you're going to pay 80% during the construction in a lot of cases, or at least 50 or 60% during construction. So which is interesting, isn't it? The people are scrambling, fighting between each other to secure those units. And that's just the state of the market we're in. And I'm sure it will slow down, and it would probably be better for the market and better for real estate companies like ourselves when it does.
What will slow it down? Is it going to be interest rates? Because at the moment, interest rates don't seem to bother to buy.
Well, I mean, interest rates, just without trying to cut you in on that, interest rates don't affect so many people here because it's so much of a cash market. So actually, when interest rates are high, people with cash need to invest their money in something, so... and especially when inflation is high, they need to put their money into something that's hopefully an appreciating asset, don't they? Which will provide them with a rental income, and hence why they're buying properties. So actually, there's a huge amount of cash in this market where people are looking to invest for the long term, which is again very different to how it was 14 or 15 years ago when they were buying with a very speculative short-term view to flip something. Now they're looking at a long-term rental return. They want their 5 or 6%. As a minimum, and that's where they're looking for a long-term view, which is why I feel very differently about the market today than I did 15 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of sellers. We met a seller the other day, Simon, that I think he said he was at a price that he just feels he's going to exit, and he's going to sit in a rented accommodation for the next couple of years, and then the market's going to fall and he's going to buy cheap again. We've seen it in Dubai. It's gone up, it's gone down. It's a lot more irrational than, US or Oz or UK.
Yeah, it's a small market, isn't it? Listen, I mean, if for some reason 1 million people decide to leave in the next 12 months, there'll be a huge price drop and there'll be some brilliant offers on the market. It's all based on, for me, it's all based on supply and demand. At the moment, the demand's very, very strong because the population's gone up. So rentals have gone up and sale prices have gone up in line with them. So I think you'd be quite brave to sell today if you have to rent for more than 12 months. Because, let's say take the average villa and Arabian Ranches that we sell a lot of, or any of these communities, you'd sell and you'd be paying approximately 6% of the value of the property per year in rent. So let's say you have to rent for 2 or even 3 years to see a price reduction. You'd have to see that property, let's say after 3 years, you'd have to see an 18% price reduction in the property for you to be any better off. And that's not factoring in the 6% in fees you're going to pay. So actually it's 24%. So that property in 3 years is going to come off a quarter or more for you to be better off. And that, I think, is a brave bet to be making, personally, purely based on the population growth and the trajectory it's been at the moment. I might be wrong, that could slow down. And if it did, then they've been very, they've been had a huge amount of foresight and seen the future. But I don't know. I think it's a brave bet to make if you want to if you're going to have to rent for more than a year before you start seeing anything. I think possibly for people who are about to retire, then yes, it might be an opportunity for them to release equity, especially if you're sending the money to pounds or euros. It would be an opportunity to lock in, 1 million or 2 million euros or pounds for your retirement. I think that makes sense.
So I think the big conversation is that actually currency exchange is the only thing that can be more short term. So the power of the American dollar, what's actually happened to the British pound, that certainly does have an impact on people in the euro, about whether or not they can make that decision to move to Dubai and do the conversion. But I believe that's a short-term impactor. Like once you start to get into a position that the economy start to normalize by about middle of next year, all of a sudden that could be back. In the meantime, a lot of the locals will make that opportunity to say, hey, look, now's a good time to jump in if any of that international market falls away. And I just don't think that it's going to fall away that quickly. And so there's a lot of other things that are actually putting the spotlight on saying very stable environment and a very great place to be. And I think that you've only got to have a look at that when you look at the number of people that see it as a full-time holiday destination now, that every night of the week there is something going on in Dubai if you wanted to actually get that lifestyle. And that's, when I walk around and I ask people, hey, why do you live in Dubai? The number one thing that continues to come up is quality of life. And I really think that you've got to realize that because there's no impact on media, because there's no major publication about inflation, because there's no conversations about what's happening with petrol prices or any of the above, people actually feel very confident to live here. And that's the really important conversation, that we sell an environment that is a safe environment. We sell an environment where people say, you know what, that's definitely somewhere I could go to live.
Up next, is a recession out of question? And will 2023 be a buyer's or seller's market? Stay tuned.
Yeah. The press are banging in the drum about the US and, the storm is brewing and, there's a lot of problems there. Is it going to have a global effect?
There's no doubt that there'll be a global recession. We're probably already in it right now.
But what you touched on earlier, Josh, is I think this is very, very different. It's a different kind of recession to the global financial crisis.
Absolutely.
2008. So it's difficult. People have got short memories. They say, oh, I remember 2008. I didn't have a job and didn't have any money. But now the world problem is that there's too much money and there's too many jobs.
You got to go back.
It's very different, isn't it?
You got to go back to the definition of what a recession is, right? So 2 quarters of negative growth. Now, that's actually okay if you've just been through 8 incredible quarters of growth. So, like, literally, it's just gone out of control and you've got to pull it back. Now, they say that, world governments printed 30% extra cash and put that into the economy at one point. Well, that's going to have a massive inflationary impact. We're now paying the cost of that. No problems. There'll be a day where that bill is being paid and then you move on. The reality of it is that we still have babies, we still get married, we still are in a position that we live a great life, and you need to live it somewhere. Might as well live it somewhere where you have a great experience.
Yeah. And if people are still coming to Dubai, then the reality is that Dubai is going to do very, very well. And I think it's a very, very different position it's been in the past, for sure. Which makes it quite exciting, right? As you just touched on, Josh, 2 quarters of negative growth isn't as scary as the word recession, is it? So hence why, what makes the newspaper sell, right? So,
and I think that's the big conversation is you've got to look at the foundational fundamental principles. If you're in a position that there's controlled development, so in other words, they slow the amount of development to market so it's not out of control, which I think they learnt the lesson in 2008. And at the same time, too, you can continue to promote it as a global city. It makes a big difference.
So the question, 2023, buyer's market or seller's market?
I think globally, without a doubt, you're moving into a position that it's going to be a buyer's market. There's definitely a good quality conversation on that. Do prices level? Absolutely. Are we in a position that we're going to see 30% property price growth? I don't think so. But at the same time too, can I say it's going to be a very stable market? Yeah, it's great. I think the biggest challenge is that, and certainly what we've seen in other markets around the world, is that anyone who bought 12 months ago and trying to sell today, they're actually in a position that they're going to have trouble trying to get their money back. But I can tell you that anyone who's owned the property for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and property is a medium to long-term play, they always do well.
Yeah, okay. 2023 from Josh globally is going to be a buyer's market. Now Simon's going to completely flip this on his head.
No, I think Dubai likes to buy the trend, but I don't think we're going to go quite opposite. I think hopefully we're at the other end of that, and it's still been appreciating this year as much as 10 or 15% this year. I would hope next year slows down a little bit more. All signs are there to say that it's going to be continue to be a buyer's market. So there's great opportunity, and I think that it's still a sensible price range. I think if you compare to all these other major cities around the world, Dubai still looks quite attractive. Prices are certainly a lot lower than they are in many international markets. So I think the opportunities are still there, and it's very exciting for the new year ahead.
An age-old story, every market makes a market. What's the important conversation? Buy and hold. And if you're in a position you buy and hold, you always do well. Yeah. It's those people, there's a great old school saying is that don't try to time the market, instead spend time in the market. And I think that's really good quality adage advice.
Is that a problem in Dubai, Simon? People holding? Are they too used to flipping?
More normal. I think in the past, I remember when we were selling properties 15, 16 years ago, the expectation was that you had to sell it a week later. That was really it was very much, let's buy, I'm going to pay 10%. And the idea was that you flip it and make 10% profit. If you made your 10% profit, you've made 100% return on your investment. And the music stopped in 2008. People lost everything they'd put down. So it was a very much, double or quits kind of environment. Now people are paying either in full or when they're buying off plan, they're being very considerate about making sure they've got enough money to make the payments on completion or maybe have access to financing on completion. They're not buying 10 properties when they could afford to buy one, which was certainly the game we used to play. So I think it's a far more stable, sensible, maturing market the opportunity is there for very, very strong rental return. I think this is the really big selling point for Dubai is that as I mentioned earlier, on today's prices, you can generate as high as 8% net rental income, which is what makes it stand out from all of these other, mature established markets around the world, and what makes it very, very attractive for people. The potential for capital growth would almost be seen as a cherry on the cake if in 10 years it does go up.
Great, guys. Appreciate it. Josh, thank you for the last 2 days. You've been here energising the team, giving us lots of tips and helping us like you've done for many years. Simon, thanks as always for your expertise. That's all we have time for today. Thank you to our listeners. We're looking forward to sharing more with you via a podcast over the next coming months. So please let us know if there are any particular topics you'd like us to cover. Don't forget to subscribe, whatever channel you're listening on, so you're notified that when we drop new sessions. You can follow us at House and House on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And we also release a monthly newsletter with all our latest updates and insights. We include all of the links in the show notes. Talk soon.
Finding this information helpful? Share this episode with friends and family to help them in their property journey. To know more about us or to contact our property specialists, visit houseandhouse.com.